What's going on, guys? Hope all is well. In today's video, we're going to dig into liens, positioning of liens, what a lien can be, why it's important to know this, because the marketplace we're headed into, this can either make it or break it as far as can you get the deal done. You may invest a lot of time into a property that has liens on it that you didn't know about and you wasted all this time, or you may have a property that has a certain type of lien on it that could be removed and you didn't know that and you passed up on it and the next investor knew more than you and bought that property, made a lot of money. So lien positioning, liens, this is all very important stuff, guys. So we're going to go quick and to the point in this video. We're not going to drag it on too much, but I want you to understand some of these main types of liens and why this is important, because essentially what a lien is debt. This is debt on a property. Money is owed to someone. To protect that position by that individual who money is owed to, they can file a lien on your property against the equity position of the property. So for example, a mortgage. A mortgage is the most common type of lien that you guys understand. When you go to the bank, you get a loan. What happens? You have a promissory note, which is the IOU. You have a deed of trust, which is a security instrument, and you have the ownership of the property, which is the deed. Now, if for some reason, the person that bought the property and borrowed money from the bank, there'll be a lien on the property with what's called a mortgage, doesn't make the payments in agreement with what the IOU or the promissory note says, they can use the deed of trust to enforce, and they can take the property back and take ownership back and foreclose to get the property back. But the lien is on the property to protect the debt owed to the lender, okay? Now, it's a very common one, everybody understands this, but what about some of these other ones over here? Now this one over here, if you guys are flipping houses or renovating properties, is very important to understand. And what I want to urge you guys to do is go on the internet after you watch this video and look up what state you're in, because certain states are different for mechanics liens than others when it comes to can you file one without a written contract in place. So a mechanics lien, the most common way to understand this is it's repairs or work done on a property. Say you hired an HVAC company to put an HVAC in, or a roofing company to put a roof on there, or plumbers to come out there and do plumbing, or a foundation company to do foundation. A lot of times they're gonna go do the work ahead of time because you may work with them on different properties, or this may be the first time they're working with you. You may be an out-of-state owner, and for some reason the money wasn't paid up front. Now a lot of times it is to protect both parties. Well, it can never protect both parties if you're paying up front. I always urge don't put your money up front, but they're gonna want you to, but if you don't pay up front and they do the work first, they're the ones not protected. So sometimes they're gonna have a contract in place that if you do not pay them based off the work that they've done, they can go file a lien for the work that was done and it will attach to the property. Now, there are certain states that you have to have a contract in place, and there are certain states that you do not have to have a contract in place, and they can just go down and file a lien on your property. Now go on the internet and check these out. Now, a very common situation is, let's say you hire John to be a general contractor who hires a bunch of subcontractors, and you go pay John $20,000 or $30,000 to manage the property. And he's going out subbing things out. Different tradesmen coming in doing drywall, doing windows, and all these different parts. What's common to happen is that those subcontractors do the work. You pay John, so John could pay Tim, but Tim was never paid by John, but Tim doesn't care because Tim did the work on your house, and Tim's coming after you to get the money from you, even though you're saying you already paid, even though it never made it down to Tim, if that makes sense. So he's gonna say what? I'm gonna put a lien on your house, and it's gonna be a big old fight in the front yard. Neighbors are gonna come out, and they'll be like, what's all this screaming about? Well, this guy's ripping me off, he's a crook. I'm not a crook, I paid this guy didn't pay him, and then this guy's gone to the wind, but it doesn't matter. So you need to be prepared to make sure you understand the laws in your area that does there need to be a contract in place or does there not? And if you're in a state where there doesn't need to be, you better be very, very cordial with your contractors, essentially, because if you piss them off, what do you think they're gonna do? And you're gonna be in some time constraints fighting them on this. So understand what a mechanic lien is, always do right by your contractors, always treat them right, always pay them right on time, and you're never gonna have problems with this. Not never, but less likely than if you did kind of be combative with them, which is what I see a lot of investors do. They cause tension between contractors, and then when it gets to this point, obviously you can see that it can create more chaos when that moment comes up. Now this is a common one, child support. So if you're gonna go buy a house with a low equity position, you're thinking you're gonna take it over sub 2, you think that this is a great deal, and all of a sudden you see there's a child support lien. Now, this is very common. You understand child support. Two individuals get together, they love each other, they get married. Sometimes they don't get married, but they have a child. Together they have equal, I don't even know what's the right way to say this, not ownership, but they're both the parents of the child, right? So there should be a shared cost in the cost for who pays the expenses to raise the child. Now, let's say one is a deadbeat and the other one is not, and the one has no money in their bank account but has equity in the house. Let's say they have $50,000 equity in the house, but whatever the agreement was or came out through the legal system, there's 30,000, 50,000, whatever it is. Since they don't have money in their bank account to protect their position, if they ever sold the house, they would have that money in their pocket. Now what happens if that person goes and spends it or hides it? They're gonna protect them by allowing them to put a child support lien on the property so that if ever house is ever sold, that other party is not wrong, it is paid off, and they're protected. So this is a lien that can come up quite regularly. Now, over here, tax liens, these are very common. You can have property tax liens, which is a great list to market to, because when people stop making their property tax or paying their taxes on the property, it's a good sign of financial distress because they could lose a property. But there's also federal tax liens. Now, I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving you legal advice, but there is, in some states, homestead states, rules on the book that if there's a federal tax lien on that property, it cannot attach to the homestead if it's a homestead property. Now, please consult with an attorney in your marketplace to make sure that this is the case in your area. But let's say there's a huge federal tax lien on property that makes it where there's no equity position in the property, but if you got that removed, there is an equity position in the property and you could buy that property. You should understand this, because knowing whether or not you can get a federal tax lien removed off a homestead property could be the difference of buying that property or not. So keep that in mind, guys, what I just said there. And then the last thing down here is I want to talk about kind of how liens work. They work in order of when they were filed. So, in order of when filed. So the one that was filed first is the one that needs to be paid off first. So let's say there's a $100,000 house with $100,000 in equity, and there's 3 liens filed. Well, let's say there's $60,000 in equity and still $40,000 lien on it. Just kind of backing up to make this example work. So let's say there's a $40,000 mortgage on there still, and then you have $20,000 mechanic liens and $20,000 of child support. Since there's a $60,000 in equity, these potentially have the ability to be paid off. But let's say that there's no equity and there's only enough to pay off the mortgage, these two would get wiped out if foreclosure happened. So what's gonna happen is the one that gets paid out is the one that filed first. It's gonna go in order of succession. So it's always in order of when filed. So a lien that was filed in January will be paid off before one that's filed in March as compared to one that's filed in May. So it's an order of succession is how they're gonna see this if there is a situation where the property has to get turned over. So that's how to look at it, guys. These are a couple different main ones that you're gonna come across. The mortgage is the most common. Mechanic liens is for repairs done on property with contractors, usually the most common. Child support and taxes. And if you are in a homestead state, check out to make sure if a federal lien can be attached to it. Make sure you go to a local attorney to see what they can say about that. And then understand that if you're going to lend money in a second position, you're in a vulnerable position, because if that first position lien forecloses, you could potentially be wiped out. And liens are paid off in the order of when they are filed. This is just basics on how liens work, guys. And if you're gonna take over properties with low equity, or you're gonna flip properties, these are all important to understand if you're new in the industry, or even if you're seasoned in the business. This is a good recap. But I hope you liked today's video, guys. If you did, it helps my videos. If you hit that like button, it helps me with my self-esteem as well. Please do so. Also, if you have not done so, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell. It's gonna notify you of future videos that pop up. If you thought you learned something in this video, guys, support the channel, and I'll see you when I see you. Guys, have a great day.